Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to our second section in this unit. Today we're going to be talking about section 6-2, and we're going to get into slope-intercept form, which you guys have seen before back in chapter 5 when we got into functions, but you guys didn't recognize it as slope-intercept form at the time. You recognized it as something else. So we're going to talk about what slope-intercept form is. And our first objective here is to write equations in slope-intercept form. And then our second objective is going to be to graph linear equations. So what are linear equations? Linear by definition means line. So when we're talking about the definition of a linear equation, we're saying an equation whose graph, let me change markers here, is a line. So I could give you an example of a linear equation. An example of a linear equation would be y equals 2x plus 5. That's an example of a linear equation. So what is a y-intercept? Linear equations always have a y-intercept. So what would that y-intercept be? A y-intercept is the y-coordinate of the point where a line crosses the y-axis. So if you need a minute to write these definitions down, please pause the video and make sure they're written down in your notebook so that I can see them. I'm going to move on. And here we're going to look at a linear equation example. And I just did a graph with a line here. And here we're going to see the definition of slope-intercept form of a linear equation. So slope-intercept form of a linear equation is y equals mx plus b, where m, just m, whatever number is here, is our slope, and b is our y-intercept. So if you want to know the slope of a linear equation that looks like this, just tell me what m is. And if you want to know the y-intercept, tell me what b is, and you'll have both of those points. Okay? Okay. So for example 1, identify slope and y-intercept. So what is the slope and y-intercept of y equals 3x minus 5? And again, we're going to use the definition or the equation y equals mx plus b, where m is slope and b is our y-intercept. So if we have the equation y equals 3x minus 5, we can simply pull out what m is. And in this case, m is 3, right here. And that's our slope. And we can pull out what b is to find our y-intercept. And b in this case is negative 5. And that's it. That's all we have to do. Okay. So for our second example, we're going to talk about how to write an equation So we're going to write an equation of the line with the slope 3/8 and a y-intercept of 6. So we're kind of doing the reverse of what we just did. We're given m and we're given b, and m is our slope of 3/8 and b is our y-intercept of 6, and we're asked to write an equation. Well, we know a linear equation is y equals mx plus b. That's our linear equation. And we know what m is, and we know what b is. So all we have to do is fill those in. Y equals 3/8 x plus 6. So in example 3, we're going to write an equation from a graph. Here we're given a graph of a line, and we're asked to write an equation of this line. So how are we going to do that? We're going to use our slope-intercept form, and that is y equals mx plus b. And we're going to try to find m and b. So I think the easiest one to find, and the first one that I'm going to find, is b. And that's our y-intercept. And b simply equals the point where our line crosses our y-axis. And in this case, it's 0, 2. Or we could simply say 2. So b is 2 in this case because it crosses the y-axis here. But now we have to find m. And there's a couple of different ways that we could find m. In this case, we're going to find one other point on our graph, and I think the easiest point to find is here. And we're going to use the formula we learned in our last section, y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And we're going to use that to find m. That's our slope. So if we have this point, which is 0, 2, and we've picked this point, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, negative 1. We know that this is x1 and y1, and x2 and y2, and we can plug those in to our equation and solve. So y2 is negative 1 minus 2 over 4 minus 0. If we simplify that, we get negative 3 over 4. So now that we know what b is 2, and now that we know our slope of negative 3/4, we can plug them in to our slope-intercept equation. And we would get y equals negative 3/4 x plus 2. And this would be our final work here. That would be the equation that represents this line. Okay. So now that you know how to find equations and write equations that represent certain lines, how do you graph an equation based on a linear slope-intercept form equation? So here we're given y equals 3x minus 1, and we want to write an equation based on this. So if we have y equals 3x minus 1, we know what m is, or our slope, and we know what b is, or our y-intercept. So because we know our y-intercept, we can go ahead and find that first. Our y-intercept in this case is going to be 0, negative 1. So let's find that point first. 0, negative 1. And now let's find our slope. Well, we have a slope of 3, but we can go ahead and write that as a fraction. 3 also means 3 over 1. And if we remember back to our last section, we know that slope means rise over run. So if we start at the first point we found, and we go up 3, we rise 3, 1, 2, 3, and we go over 1, we can have a second point here. And based on this second point, we can draw a line. Sorry for my bad art skills, guys. And that's how you would draw a line based on a linear equation. That's it for today. Yep, I think that's it for today. So remember to do the 5-question quiz that I gave you. Remember that these videos are going to get better. I know they're kind of bad right now. I promise our techniques will get better. I promise this will get better as the year goes on. If you guys have any suggestions or comments that you want to make with me privately, please do so. Other than that, thank you for watching.